So this is a police state. It's a police state. Don't say Kutaka to me. You have no right to say Kutaka to me. You have no right to say Kutaka to me.
Welcome to this edition of Free Talk, proudly brought to you by Heart and Soul TV and Radio in partnership with Frederick Newman Foundation. Now I'm your host, as always, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, and this evening we are joined in studio by a respected lawyer, a human rights lawyer who has worked in Zimbabwe in the legal system for a very, very long time, starting off working from the government and now in private practice. She has won numerous awards across the world in recognition of her work. Now we sit down this evening on Free Talk to discuss why she chooses to do what she does. Is she happy to be the last line of defense on the democracy front in a country where many have said there's a serious violation of human rights, and also at times lawyers are caught in the crossfire, and she has a number of times, but she remains standing. Welcome, Madam Mtetwa, and thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you for asking me to be your guest, Blessed.
Beautiful. Now, let's just start, Madam Mtetwa. Who chose who, the profession or you?
I would probably say the profession chose me because I have a very rural background. I didn't know many lawyers when I grew up. And when it was time to go to university, I chose law more through a process of elimination of what I didn't want to do and what I could not do. So I settled on law on the basis that, oh, that's something exciting that I could do because I qualify for it. But once I got into law and I understood what it was all about, I actually realized that I loved the profession, and that it could be used as an instrument of really making sure that people enjoy their rights, as an instrument of change, as an instrument of enhancing democracy. And I realized that I had been doing it actually in my young life, because I come from a background where my father was a big polygamist, and I used to fight with him to ensure that me and my siblings from all the other mothers would get what we were entitled to, instead of him going to spend all that money on women.
Amazing. But tell us the journey that you've walked. You came from working with government and
Yes.
then into private practice.
Mm-hmm.
What motivated that change for you?
I actually enjoyed very much my stint as a prosecutor because I felt very strongly that if you have transgressed, you must be punished, but if you are innocent, you should not be punished. In the early 80s, it worked well until there were some aspects of interference here and there. And it was the interferences in particular where you had guilty people released and innocent people prosecuted for political reasons. That was a time when there were lots of atrocities being committed in Matabeleland. Some of those cases were moved to Harare. I remember with a colleague in 1985, we did a case where 4 members of the ruling party had assaulted a woman who was a Mwonzora supporter, and we felt very strongly about that prosecution, and the magistrate, who's now late but who was an ex-combatant, actually also felt convicted the 4 accused persons, 3 men and a woman, and sentenced them to terms ranging between 8 months and 24 months. And one of the 3 men had a case pending where he was a complainant because he had been fired unlawfully. In those days, it was a criminal offense to fire an employee without following due process. So when we asked for him to come to court from prison, we found that the man had only spent 1 night in prison, and President Banana had granted him a pardon overnight, which was completely unheard of. It was so demoralizing. And all I could think of was whether I was complicit in this. I mean, imagine the woman who had been traumatized, who would have felt elated that, her assailants had been convicted and were going to spend time in jail, to discover that actually they had spent 1 night and had been released by the system. That was the beginning of my unhappiness in the system. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I left.
Fast forward to today, do prosecutors still face those challenges in your view?
Probably more than we did at our time, because right now those people would never have been arrested in the first place. But at least in 85 they were arrested and they were prosecuted and they were convicted. The fact that they did not serve the sentence could not have been the fault of the judicial officer or the prosecutor. It was the fault of the politicians, of the executive, Currently, people in that category simply do not get arrested, let alone get convicted. So I think prosecutors currently face an even, a higher mountain to climb than we did in the early 80s.
Do you think there are people in the prosecution who have moral conscience and feel the same way that you did feel when you were a young girl then?
Absolutely. I think they are there, but we are living in an economy where, if you have a job, you'll hang on to it for dear life, because, if your conscience tells you that what is happening is wrong and you leave, you still have rent to pay, you still have to leave. So a lot of people are forced to be where they are by circumstances, especially economic and financial circumstances. I'm absolutely certain that there are many, not just prosecutors, judicial officers as well, who know what is right and what is wrong and what should be done in terms of the law. But because of the fear of, the financial impact on you, and in addition, the reprisals, because it's not only just the economic aspects that one fears for, there can be reprisals if you're seen not to be towing the line. So that on its own forces a lot of people to stay and be part of a system they may not particularly care about.
But let us come to you, Madam Mtetwa. You have made it in life in the eyes of the ordinary Zimbabwean, but you continue every day to speak for those who have no voices. You have represented journalist, you have represented human rights activists, and you also have represented judges, in this case Justice Ndewere that you're representing right now. What motivates you to keep doing this?
Well, it's my job. I mean, I took an oath that I would abide by the laws of the land, that I would really ensure that the rights that are in the Constitution are enjoyed to the fullest possible. And I never look at cases from the perspective that they are political or not, because I do not consider that I'm a politician. My job is being a lawyer, and if a case fits into a certain category and it is the type of case that most people don't want to do, I'm always happy to really take it. You would be very surprised at the number of lawyers who will call me to say, oh, my client is in trouble, but you know, Beatrice, I don't do these kinds of cases. Can you take it on? Or some people just fail to get a lawyer because of you know, who they will be litigating against. I mean, I get so-called high-profile cases not because I was the first choice of the litigant, but because they have failed to get other lawyers to represent them.
I mean, the bravery, where does it come from, Madam Mtetwa?
I don't consider it brave to do my job, because I should not be, you know, intimidated or harassed for doing my job. You know, if Mary Chiwenga needs a lawyer and she comes to me because no one else has agreed to represent her, I don't see why I should not represent her because she's married to the vice president. I don't see why I shouldn't do that. If the independence of the judiciary is being compromised and judges are not being given due legal process, you know, in terms of what was agreed to, that if a judge is errant and needs to be disciplined and you follow certain processes, if they don't get those processes, my view is that the independence of the judiciary is being compromised, and we do need to protect the judges so that they can be independent, knowing that the profession will stand behind them. And I have a problem understanding why other lawyers don't want to do the same thing, because it's just basic practice of law. If your rights have been violated and you want a lawyer, the lawyer should not be, you know, treated as if they are their client, and their clients also shouldn't be harassed. This is why it should be due legal process, not harassment.
You've been arrested by the police, Beatrice. You have at times been threatened, but you keep going. I want to understand where that courage comes from. I mean, people would want to know what is behind that face. Well,
firstly, blessed, when you take on a case, you don't know that you will be arrested. It will be just a regular case. But if you get arrested, it's a part of the territory. You know that human rights defenders also get intimidated. Their clients' causes are turned into their own causes. But my attitude is, Chikurubi female prison was made for female prisoners. If I'm arrested, I'm just like any other person. I just, you know, go to Chikurubi and Fugama in front of Mbuya there and be one of the prisoners until I get out. But the issue is that it is regular people who go to these prisons. It is regular people who get arrested, and there's nothing special about lawyers. What is unacceptable is that it is used as a form of intimidation. It is used as a form of controlling who does which cases. It is meant to deter, especially younger lawyers, from doing a certain kind of work. And I feel very strongly that as a senior lawyer, I should be there to show the younger lawyers that you know, it can be done, it should be done. And in fact, there should be more older lawyers doing what I do, because you'll see that generally, you know, the crop of lawyers who do human rights work tends to be younger. and the senior lawyers simply just don't do this kind of work. I feel very strongly that we should all be doing this work. I feel very strongly that senior lawyers should commit to at least doing one human rights case a year, even just one, so that the younger lawyers can understand what we are trying to do. The rights in the Constitution are there to be enjoyed, and they cannot be enjoyed if we do not do anything to make sure that at a practical level they are enforced by going to court. And I know that some judges perceive me as being problematic because you know, they have to make decisions that they sometimes don't want to make. But the bottom line is we all took an oath. That oath must be respected on both sides. A magistrate, a judge, a defense lawyer, a prosecutor, they are all the same. When they get admitted, they take an oath, and we all should abide by that law. We perform different, tasks within the judiciary, but all of it must be designed to ensure that justice is done. If you have erred, let the law punish you. If you are innocent, don't be arrested unnecessarily. And even if you have erred, be treated humanly when you are arrested. This business of treating suspects as if they are already guilty, because even when you are guilty, you're still entitled to be treated with humanity, with respect, and with dignity.
Beatrice, you're one of those legal minds that have been recognized worldwide. You could have been a judge of the Constitutional Court, of the Supreme Court, of the High Court. You've never applied. Baffles me, why?
Well, there are many issues behind that. But yes, in 1998, I was asked if I would be interested, but my children were still young. And also, I do not consider that I have the demeanor of a judge. You know, judges are expected to behave in a certain way. I don't think I can behave like that. Judges are expected not to have fun and go and dance to macheso. Judges, in my view, live a very boring life. They won't even be able to give this type of interview. So I like the freedom that, doing what I do gives me. I can do whatever case I like. If I'm a judge, I would be allocated certain types of cases that wouldn't really advance and develop the law in any way. I love the freedom that my work gives me, because I do what I think might be impactful without restrictions.
When you had a conversation with Trevor, you spoke about your view as judges that there's judicial capture in this country. Mm-hmm. Hasn't that come back to bite you?
Yeah, this is why I'm saying that some of the judicial officers and some of the judges do perceive me in a certain way, because the attitude is, well, if we're captured, why do you come to our courts? And
why do you go to their courts if they're captured?
You can't talk of capture without actually going to court. The only way you can speak of capture is going to court and seeing the law, which is black and white, being subverted because of the litigants and their profiles. So for me to be able to say that this decision is a result of subversion of the law because the other litigant is powerful or is this or that, you have to take that case to court. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. So, for me, I will go to court until someone stops me. And even when they try to stop me, I'll challenge them, like I did Mr. Nduna, who tried to remove me from a case when he has absolutely no legal basis for doing that. So for me, it is absolutely crucial for people to go to court to test the system. to its limit, to show the system for what it is. This is not to suggest there aren't some few judges who really do what is right, and when they do what is right in some of these cases, we almost always know that the case will go to the Supreme Court and what is just will be changed for political reasons. I mean, in this country we have had custody laws, for instance, completely changed to suit individuals who happen to be powerful in terms of money, in terms of political power, etc. So we know what the law is. Everyone knows what the law is, but the law gets interpreted in certain ways when blessed who is powerful is a litigant.
But then when that happens, what then is the alternative? Because we always thought that the last bulwark of democracy is a judicial system.
We have to keep on pushing in the hope that more and more judges will refuse to surrender their independence, in the hope that judges will understand that if they allow their independence to be taken away, then we might as well have no courts. I wouldn't want to be called a judge if I'm not actually doing what is expected of me as a judge. So for me, I mean, we have to keep testing the system. One day we'll have a Chief Justice who will be able to lead from the front in defense of the judiciary, in defense of democracy, in defense of the Constitution, and in defense of the independence of the judiciary. In most countries, independence of the judiciary is compromised by the politicians, by the executive. In Zimbabwe, we are finding that more and more compromises are being done from within the judiciary. The people who ought to be defending the independence of the judiciary are the ones compromising the independence, which is an absolute and total shame.
After you made those statements, someone would think that judges would not come any closer to you. But Justice Ndebele, in an hour of need, came to you, and you were on the ground like that minute. Why?
Well, I mean, she needs a lawyer, and she chooses to ask me to represent her. Why shouldn't I represent her? And she's someone I've known. We're in prosecution together. But the point is that judges also need legal representation that will not be compromised in any way, and she's entitled to choose a lawyer of her own choice like everyone else, despite knowing that some of her colleagues do not particularly look at me favorably.
But you went to her house at a time where there were reports. I remember receiving messages that a truck full of people had arrived at her house, and you rushed there. What muscle do you have, facing those kind of people who were probably armed and dangerous?
Yeah, the point is that if she says, and you probably saw that, if she says this is what happened, the system denies it. The system simply says, oh, nothing like that happened. But if I arrive there and I take photographs, which is exactly what I did, nobody could deny that this is what happened.
But I'm asking, which muscle will you carry? I mean, I would be fearful going there myself.
Listen, the bullet that has my name is there, I can't change it. When the day has come and you have that bullet that has my name on it, I'll be taken out. But I'm not going to stop living and doing my job because I fear that, that day might be the day when the bullet with my name will come for me. It's all going to happen to us at some stage. We don't know how, when, and through whom, but it's going to happen. And it's something that's predestined. I can't change the day when I will die and how I will die. So I'm not going to stop doing my work because I fear something might happen to me. It can happen to me. I can be sitting here and a bee can come and sting me and I die, so what's the difference?
There's some who have said that from Robert Mugabe, the former president, may his soul rest in peace, and to the new dispensation, the number of arrests and human rights abuses have sort of somewhat changed. Now it's lesser. In your view, as a human rights lawyer and from experience, do you think that there's an improvement?
No, I don't think there's any improvement at all. I mean, there can be no question that the law is being used to deal with political opponents. This is why people everybody knows are corrupt. They've never been touched. In fact, they continue being given more corrupt work. You know, so how can you say more arrests are being made? The question that people should be asking is, are there more convictions? Are there more trials of these people who've been arrested? How many have been successfully tried fairly? You know, you might have your undenge here and there, but the bottom line is there is this rush to arrest, and then nothing happens, and they keep your passport, they make you report, and for years you are not prosecuted. And we are seeing more and more activists being arrested, even on the flimsiest of grounds, because their attempt is to say, particularly to you young people, if you do this, this is what we can do to you.
Are you considering hanging your jabon anytime soon?
You never know. If I'm still, you know, if my mind is still clear enough for me to practice, I'll try to do it for as long as I can, because I think I would be extremely bored
Staying at home?
If I just stayed at home. I might slow down a little bit, yeah, but I would like to go on for as much as my mind will allow me. Otherwise, I might go to an early grave from boredom.
What do you do to keep yourself fit and be able to, you know, weather these storms that you face every day?
Well, I mean, I was working with a group until I got a very bad COVID strain beginning of the year. So I'm not yet fully recovered. I can't walk the distances that we used to go. But as I recover fully, I will start walking again. I love dancing. Unfortunately, COVID means there are fewer and fewer parties, so I can't dance that much anymore.
Yeah, so we saw you dance on your on the Jerusalem challenge.
Yeah. So there's less and less physical activity that I do.
Any dietary advice?
I like eating traditional foods. You know, I mean, I'm a big fan of traditional eating, so I eat a lot of those.
I've watched you in court, so meticulous. You always have your notebook there, and the other case that I was in court sitting there, you appeared to have taken all the notes in terms of the arrest of Hopo Chingono. It was, I think, yes, the time the police did this, and you were comparing your notes with the police officer who didn't have his own.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to young lawyers, and why do you do that?
Detail is extremely important. The small detail is what will show the court whether someone is telling the truth or not. So the minute you are on a case, do not think something is irrelevant, because you never know what might become relevant back in court. So it's absolutely crucial that you keep every detail that might be useful as and when the trial starts, particularly because our trials start so many months down the line, 18 months, 24 months, and the policeman in between has been doing a whole lot of other things. But if you have your own small little details, including who was wearing what, it might make a difference, because the policeman will most likely say, oh, I don't remember. And the impression that gives is that perhaps they're not being truthful, or they paid no attention to detail. So it's very, very important to have all your details and all your facts correct. It's also very, very important to prepare before you go to court. Don't just think you can go up in court and stand up, and then start prepare. Have questions prepared on how to cross-examine each witness using their statement of what they're going to say. So preparation is very, very, very important.
Amazing. Now, thank you, viewers, for joining us on this program, Free Talk, in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. Now, we have a number of people who are joining us virtually from Clubhouse, and we are going to ask them to just ask Madame Beatrice Mtetwa here a few questions so that she can be able to interact with other people who follow her work outside the realm of journalism, us who can ask you questions every other time. But I will invite you, colleagues on Clubhouse, who will be flashing his mic or her mic so that I can take your question first. Okay, so Madeini, can you please go ahead?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I wanted to just, I've never seen a breast person like Beatrice. I just wanted to just, so that she hears it from me personally. I think I started hearing about her around 2008 when she represented Justina Mukoko. My question to her is, how has she ever lost any high-profile case? I rest my...
Yes, I have lost quite a few high-profile cases, but sometimes what the public thinks are high-profile cases might not be high-profile in my view, because some of the cases that might give me a lot of pleasure are never the type of cases that the press actually thinks are high-profile cases. Cases that really involve ordinary people in the street who do get justice because we have intervened as lawyers for human rights. I always get great pleasure from that, and I think those are, for me, the most high-profile cases.
Amazing. I saw Wadzanai there. Oh, Makosi. Thank you, Makosi, for joining us. Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Beatrice. You represented my uncle. I think you represented him in 2014 or 2015. And when we came to court, as I watched you work, I came to the consciousness of how risky the cases you take on. And it just left me wondering, what is your why? Why do you do what you do, even at the cost of your own life?
Well, actually, it's a fun job. Come to think of it, I mean, we enjoy some of these cases. There's lots of fun things that we do as human rights lawyers. We play our own tricks on the system from time to time, so there's a lot of fun to be had. But if you've taken that oath, you've got to live by it. And as I said earlier, I don't regard the job as being dangerous, because it is not supposed to be dangerous to practice law. So I do it because it's my job. If a doctor goes to work and they work without being harassed, although they treat people that the system may not like, why shouldn't a lawyer do the same?
Amazing. Anyone else who wants to take a question for Beatrice? Nash,
ask Beatrice a question.
Please go ahead, Nash.
Hi, Beatrice, can you hear me?
Hi.
Okay, no, I just wanted to ask, being a representative in Zimbabwe, do you get paid enough for what you do?
Unfortunately, most of the work that I do is for people who need legal services at a time when really they are unable to pay. But I get paid enough to live, to send my kids to school, and I think, enough is a very relative term. If I have a roof over my head and I have food, I think that means I am quite satisfied with where I am. I don't think human rights work particularly in the legal field, is really about remuneration, because I could be doing corporate work and making money, but it's very difficult to say you're doing human rights work if the expectation is that you'll be paid lots of money. But no, I get enough to live comfortably on.
Thank you. Yes, Madaine, is there anyone who hasn't asked? So before I go back to Madaine, oh, I see Dewa Mavunga. Yes, please come through.
Thank you so much, and greetings, Beatrice, and many thanks for your great work. I just wanted to ask about overall perceptions. You know, there are a number of constitutional amendments happening. There are complaints about the judiciary being compromised, the independence of the judiciary at different levels. And as a senior lawyer in Zimbabwe, looking back at your experience in human rights work, what is your comment or a view on issues to do with the judiciary being compromised in Zimbabwe? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I feel very strongly about these constitutional amendments, because when the people of Zimbabwe went out and voted for this constitution on that 16th day of March 2013, they were making a statement. More than 90%, I think 93% it was, who voted for that constitution. It's an absolute slap in the face for the MPs and senators who are being complicit in this mutilation of the constitution. And I think as and when the challenges are heard in the courts, it would be a sad day if the judiciary says a process that is patently unconstitutional and unlawful is lawful. It will be saying to the people of Zimbabwe, yes, you said this is what you wanted, but we absolutely do not care about what you said you wanted, particularly because the consultative process made it very clear that people didn't want these amendments. So anyone who will go back there and say that we have a democracy, those that are in parliament are representing the views of the people of Zimbabwe, they will be lying, absolutely lying, because the people spoke again, and they have been ignored. And I'm hoping that the judiciary will see these amendments for what they are, even though some of them are meant to be beneficiaries. But the bottom line is, if anyone says these amendments are advancing democracy, they will be lying to the people of Zimbabwe.
And he also spoke about the capture of the judiciary, maybe since he said your views on that.
But I mean, you can see that the attempt is to benefit sections of the judiciary. And although we have a few of judges that remain brave, sadly, they don't always get the cases that are impactful, and because they are not trusted. And so certain cases will end up before certain judges for no other reason than that the result is predetermined.
As we speak about the constitutional amendment, some have argued that it's good because it extends the women quota. In your view, is that empowerment of women by extending the quota?
Well, if you have to also look at how the women who will ultimately enjoy those benefits are chosen. You do not get powerful, straight-talking women into that position. So it's a false narrative to say it's going to increase the quota of women, because they choose women who will aid and abet patriarchy, who will be so grateful that they've been given those positions that they will not challenge those who've given them that position. I refuse to believe that someone who is chosen through a murky system that has no transparency, that chooses the weakest women to these positions, is advancing the cause of women. We are not asking for skirts to be there. We are asking for people who will meaningfully contribute and uplift other women and enjoy what the Constitution says women should enjoy. You've seen a lot of violations of women's rights in the past 2-3 years. Have you seen a single group of women saying we will not have this? No. You haven't. The only women we saw was when Mrs. Chamisa's microphone was taken. But other than that, you've seen a lot of abuses that women have gone through with no women doing anything about it, because our women leaders are our weakest link. They don't choose strong women to represent us. So I am saying no to women who will be going in to aid patriarchy. If they want strong women, the amendment should make it very clear that those women will be chosen by women across the board on the basis of their proven records.
Amazing. Anyone else who still wants to put a question? Mwandaine, you can go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. I have 2 questions. My first question is, can we safely say you are passion driven? That's my first question. And my second question is it true that your firm represents Econet Wireless here in Zimbabwe? Thank you.
Well, I do have a passion for enforcement of rights, yes. And yes, we do represent Econet. I was one of the lawyers who were involved right at the beginning when there was the battle for the licenses. Myself and Tawanda Nyamirai were part of that team. So yes, we have represented Econet.
Amazing. How long have you been doing this, Beatrice? And what are the good moments for you in this career that you have had?
I walked into an office as a qualified lawyer on the 1st of June 1981. So in June I'll be celebrating 40 years of being a lawyer. I think
I was 6 months old then.
You're 6 months old then, yeah. So I've had a long and wonderful and impactful career. I have lots of great moments. You know, as I say, for me, the great moments are not the big cases that you media guys follow, but when an ordinary person from Glenview or from Guadzana enjoys rights that they would otherwise not have enjoyed without our intervention as lawyers. Those are my greatest moments.
Do you have any regrets?
I don't know if I would call them regrets. Sometimes I look back at my stint in government and I think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have stayed as long as I did. Maybe I was complicit. But I feel that that is a time which molded me, which made me know what goes on the other side, and that it actually helped me walk the journey that I've walked since I left government. Yeah, I really don't have any regrets in terms of the path that I have followed. I've tried the best that I can. Sometimes the best that I've done is not good enough, but I'll continue trying to do the best that I can.
You've won awards. Have you sat down to plan to win these awards?
I actually get surprised when I just get called to say, oh, you've won this award. I'm like, who knows me at that university, or who? You don't do the work that you don't know what will be considered work. And also it's not just one case. You find that you've been doing certain types of cases and then you get recognized for it. But I mean, I don't think there is a single lawyer who does work for awards. I think people would rather do work in expectation of, legal fees than awards. But the recognition has has been a good protector for me, because I think, without the profile that I have, I probably would be harassed a bit more than I am.
But there was a time when Jonathan Moyo, described you as very talkative and sometimes getting into the way of the law. I think this is the time when you are arrested for allegedly obstructing the law.
Yes.
How did that affect you? If it did.
I really don't care. I mean, so many things have been written about me. I remember one where Charamba called me fat and ugly. I've been called so many names, but I know who I am. I don't care what someone else says about me, how they categorize me. I'm not in this thing as a beauty contest, or I really don't care. It's water off a duck's back. I don't care.
But when Charamba said that you take a time to go to the mirror, you just...
I know who I am, and but if someone put me and him in front of the mirror, I'll probably win. Yeah.
And any last question? I will take one last question. Masi, please go ahead. Masi. Is it Masi?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Dara. Thank you for this opportunity to hear you speak. My question is, you said you started law way back in 1981. My question is, at what point did you become passionate about human rights? What was it? What was the sort of iconic moment or anything that happened, way back, which sent you into this path? Thank you.
When I went to college in the 70s, we really didn't do human rights law in the way that they do it. All we did was constitutional law, which gives you generally an idea of what rights are. But when I started working, even when I worked as a prosecutor, my attitude was that I would prosecute with integrity. I would not push a case where the evidence was weak. And that way I saw that, there wasn't going to be a conviction at the end of the day. I should be able to have the integrity to say, this one is innocent. And the more I saw of people who were being politically persecuted using the law in the early 80s, the more I felt uncomfortable with that. But as I said at the beginning of the interview, I come from a large polygamous family where we had to fight for space, fight to be sent to the right schools, etc. And because I'm the oldest in that family, and my father had 101 wives and I don't know how many children, I also fought for all of those children, because my attitude was, I don't think we should have our education and upbringing compromised because he had chosen a certain type of a lifestyle. I think my activism started then, although of course at the time I didn't realize it. But I think I've always had a sense that whatever one does, it must be done with integrity. It must be fair, it must be just. So I think perhaps unwittingly my upbringing made me sensitive to people really being granted the rights that they deserve.
Okay, so I'll allow Nhlanhla to ask the last question before we wrap it up. Nhlanhla?
Thanks. Beatrice, how are you doing?
I'm good, Nhlanhla. How are you?
Doing great, thanks. Great work you're doing. I've got two questions to ask you. Firstly, I just want to hear your thoughts on this, and if you have any comments you can make. There's human rights violations, of course, at a political and systemic level, which is, of course, stark and in everybody's faces in this country. But also, at grassroots level, I think at the moment with this level of corruption that we're seeing in the country, which I think is unprecedented at any moment in time in Zimbabwe, you are starting to see that even people at grassroots level do not have equal access to the law. So, for instance, if you go and make a report of a case at the police station, if the complainant is someone of influence, the police are now able to water down any type of issue without any form of recourse or aid to the complainant. So you're finding that access to the law has become so limited, and specifically only for people that have means, to the effect that governmental institutions and the police service are no longer accessible, or justice is no longer accessible to someone who, as it were, is not a person with means. So that deep entrenched corruption, how do you think, as a citizenry and as a human rights law community, can be circumvented without necessarily needing to engage the government? Is that even possible, that we can make a citizenry maybe aware or empower them in a way that can be circumvented, or we can overhaul those institutions without necessarily facing political pushback or institutional
can you ask the next question?
I think my connection is better. So the next question is, what advice would you have for an aspiring human rights lawyer? What direction would you point them towards, that in an area that you feel like maybe you would have wanted to get into and didn't necessarily get into, or a direction that you wish you'd go towards, but because of other commitments or time, or because you are focused on one particular area, what area would you say, maybe if you go into this area, we can actually do more good, and some people can go into this area, some people can go into that area?
Thank you, Tata.
Thank you, Tata. The human rights community, and I am including all activists here, only scratches at the surface. We don't get anywhere near where our services are needed, and it's an absolute and total shame. I feel very strongly that the citizens themselves should make it conducive for people to enjoy rights. We have very, very few lawyers who practice human rights, and they are practicing human rights against a backdrop where they also have to feed their families. So we really need the society, local society, to capacitate human rights lawyers, not just financially so that they can look after their families, but also by giving us information. I mean, our services are accessed mainly by people who are in the cities. People in the rural areas who need our services more than anyone else, do not get our services. We also need a judiciary that will be sensitive to what the Constitution says. If the Constitution says we have a right to water, and when you go to court to say we do not have water here, and the courts, I remember one judge writing a judgment against one human rights lawyer that I shall not name, saying she was a meddling busybody. Why did she bring this case to court? Because there's a lack of understanding, that the rights are there to be enjoyed, Overhauling the system, we overhauled the system by bringing in the 2013 Constitution. We thought that if the Constitution is very clear on what we are entitled to, the judiciary will be in the forefront of saying, we don't care what other legislation says, the Constitution says X, Y, Z, and you shall give the people and you shall give them this by such and such a time. That is not happening. So, overhaul of the system means that people will do what they are expected to do in terms of the law, not to subvert the law, to please a few political players. So I don't know whether overhauling the system works. For me, it hasn't worked. We got a new Chief Justice who's become worse than the previous one, and we got a new constitution which is better than the old one, but we're busy mutilating it right now in order to water it down so that we concentrate power back into the executive. And
Got a new president?
yeah, so we got a new president, but we are having more and more, human rights defenders being arrested on the flimsiest of grounds. We have courts that will not give bail. The Constitution says bail is a right. It is a right that you walk into court having. But we're having magistrates who think that it's a big favor to be given bail. You know, when you appear before them, you know that when I make an application before this magistrate, this will be the answer. You do it simply to create a record to go to the next court, not because you expect to get it. So, I mean, I don't think overhauling systems has worked, because we've overhauled, but we are worse off than before the overhaul. What would I say to a young human rights coming in? I don't know what advice I would give to them really, other than to have staying power, because it's not always easy. But if you have conviction, if you have staying power, and you know what your passion is, you'll just follow it, and do what is best in the circumstances. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. I will ask you in closing, just to share a message to the people of Zimbabwe from your legal realm, from the work that you do, a message from your heart that you would want to share with our viewers.
I can say perhaps it is darkest before dawn, but as I always say, good always prevails over evil. We should just have the staying power to fight for what we believe is the good side of how we should be governed, how we should enjoy rights, and that if we all come together to do this as a people, we shall overcome.
Thank you very much, Beatrice, for joining us on this program, Free Talk, proudly brought to you by Heart and Soul TV and Radio in partnership with our amazing partners, Frederick Newman Foundation. Our partners believe that a democracy can thrive where people have honest dialogue, they have free talk, and we all work together to build a nation, a better nation. And we were having a conversation with Beatrice Mtetwa, one of the leading human rights lawyers in Zimbabwe, who has been recognized the world over. I'm sure at one point you received an award directly from the United States of America, President Barack Obama. And amazing moments. Thank you very much for allowing us into your space and talking to us. Now, this is the Free Talk, and thank you very much for joining us. I am your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Until we meet next time, keep safe. This is Free Talk in partnership with Frederick Newman Foundation, our partners in free speech. Free speech is the center of development of any nation.